Are you planning on implementing Power over Ethernet or PoE in your home network? If so, you need to make a decision about what power source you're going to use for these PoE devices. You can use either a PoE switch or a PoE injector, but you'll need one of these two devices in your home network. Let's dive into the differences between these two devices and when you would want to implement each one in your home network. Let's do a quick refresher on why you need PoE for these devices in the first place. So when it comes to Power over Ethernet, what's happening is you're providing power to a PoE device through an Ethernet cable. And this is different than normal operation because normally when you have two devices connected with an Ethernet cable, they're simply passing data to each other through that Ethernet cable. But with Power over Ethernet, not only are you providing data through the Ethernet cable, but you're providing power as well, and that's what allows the device to be powered on without having to be connected to a power outlet. The trouble here is that normally in your home network, there are no devices that are able to serve as a power source for your PoE devices. Normally, these devices would be connected to your router with an Ethernet cable, but your router was never designed to be a power source for any of the devices in your home network. In other words, your router can't provide your PoE devices with enough power for them to remain powered on. And that's why we need to use a switch or an injector. So both of these devices, your switch and your injector, they achieve the same thing. They serve as a power source for your home network when you're using PoE. However, they do it a little bit differently in the sense that they're made for different use cases. Let's start with PoE injectors. And PoE injectors are pretty simple devices. They're made to provide power to one PoE device. And what happens is you have your router that's connected to your PoE injector with an Ethernet cable, and then you have another Ethernet cable that's then connected to your PoE device, and then your injector is connected to a power outlet. So basically, if you think about it, your PoE injector is just serving as an extension cable for your PoE device, and it allows you to place your PoE device in a location that's not near a power outlet. So this is super helpful for devices like security cameras that you might want to place outside your home. You obviously don't have many power outlets outside your home, but with PoE, it allows you to place that security camera where it serves you best, and you don't have to worry about it being near a power outlet. When it comes to a PoE switch, the setup and configuration is quite similar, except the only difference is with a PoE switch, you can power on multiple PoE devices at once using this device as the power source. So with a PoE switch, what you have is you have your router connected to your PoE switch with an Ethernet cable. Then, as you can see here, you have additional ports, and all of these ports can be used to connect your PoE switch to different PoE devices in your home. This is extremely helpful when you have multiple PoE devices that are in the same area because you can connect them all to the switch, provide them power, and then you don't have anything to worry about. The one caveat here is that you need to keep in mind that PoE switches, although they serve as a power source, they have a limited amount of power that they can provide. So in other words, if you're connecting 4 PoE devices that require a lot of power, your switch might not be able to provide all of them with enough power. So a PoE switch will come with a budget, and you need to make sure you stay under that budget in order to ensure all those PoE devices are powered on. If you go over that budget, what you'll find is some of your PoE devices will turn off, and this device will prioritize a few PoE devices to remain powered on. This is getting into the weeds a little bit here. I'll create a separate video talking about PoE switches, how to set them up, and how to make sure you stay under their PoE budget. But just know for now that PoE switches, they're used to power on multiple PoE devices. Now that we know how both of these devices work, let's walk through a few examples just so you can see the usability and when you would want to use each device. Okay, so we have a simple diagram here which serves as a layout of a house. Here you have a couple power outlets, you have your router and modem in your home network, and let's walk through a few examples of PoE devices you might want to implement. Let's start with a security camera. Say we want this security camera, we want it facing the outside of our house, so maybe we can look at our front lawn or our driveway. What we need to do, we need to implement a PoE power source, in order to power on this security camera. So what do we implement here? Is we can use a PoE injector. As you'll remember, PoE injectors are great for powering on one device. That PoE injector, it's connected to the power outlet, it's connected to your router with an Ethernet cable, and then the device itself. Pretty straightforward, not much to see here. At this point, let's say we want to add another PoE device to our home. We want to add another security camera outside of our home, and I know what you might be thinking. PoE injectors, they're made to power on one PoE device. So if we have multiple PoE devices, we want to use a PoE switch. Well, here is where some planning needs to come into play. Because these two devices, these two PoE security cameras, are not that close to each other, it might be easier to use another PoE injector. That way, if you had a switch trying to connect both of these devices, it might get a little complicated. You might have to go through these walls with the Ethernet cable. Maybe it's easier to just implement another PoE injector where you have your injector connected to your router with an Ethernet cable, and then the other end is connected to your security camera, and then you use this other outlet that's in this other room to provide power. I use this example here just to point out that you need to do some planning before you implement PoE devices in your home network. Just because you have multiple PoE devices, it doesn't mean that a PoE switch is the best fit for that configuration. With that said, let's say we want to add another PoE device to our home network. We want to add a wireless access point. Say our Wi-Fi signal from our router doesn't cover our entire home, and we want to make sure this area of the home gets a Wi-Fi signal as well. So what we can do, we can add a PoE wireless access point to our home network to provide Wi-Fi coverage to our entire home. In this case, we can't use a PoE injector to provide power to both our security camera and our wireless access point because PoE injectors can only be used to power on one device. So this is a case where we might want to use a PoE switch because these two PoE devices are close to each other. So it makes sense. We have one Ethernet cable from our router to our switch, and then from our switch, we can have shorter Ethernet cables to our security camera and wireless access point. Then you can still use one outlet. You connect your PoE switch to the outlet, and you should be good to go. Here are some other things to keep in mind when planning your home network is that obviously, as you saw in the example, your PoE power sources, in other words, your switch or your injector, they need to be located close to a power outlet. Your PoE devices do not, but your power sources do. So that's something you need to factor in when you're designing PoE in your home network. On top of that, when it comes to actual budget, a PoE switch, although it can power on more PoE devices, it's more expensive than a PoE injector. So in the example where we used two PoE injectors to power on two different PoE devices, if you buy 2 or 3 PoE injectors, it might come out to the same price as a PoE switch. So if budget is something you're worried about, that's something to consider, is that PoE injectors are cheaper, so you shouldn't buy a PoE switch by default. They give you more flexibility, but at the same time, if you only need to power on one device, an injector will work just fine. Another thing you need to consider is that based upon the PoE devices you're going to implement in your home network, you need to make sure that your PoE switch or your PoE injector are the same PoE version as those devices. There are 3 different versions of PoE. I've detailed all of those in a separate video, so you'll want to check that out if you're not sure which version you need in your home network. And the other piece of this is that the PoE versions are backwards compatible. So for example, if you have a PoE Plus switch or injector, you can use it to power on PoE devices. I'll include some links in the description for a PoE switch and a PoE injector that are commonly used and I would recommend. But just keep in mind you can use them to power on standard PoE devices if you would like to. The last thing you need to consider is that for the Ethernet cable that's connecting your power source and PoE device, so in other words, the Ethernet cable connecting your switch and your security camera or your access point, that Ethernet cable needs to be rated for PoE. This is another video that I've made that I'll include in the description that talks about how you can make sure that your Ethernet cables are rated for PoE. I'd love to see in the comments section what you plan on implementing or what you've already implemented when it comes to PoE. Did you opt for a PoE switch, or are you using a PoE injector? And what PoE devices are you powering on using these power sources? As always, thanks for checking out this episode from Network from Home, and we'll catch you on the next one.